We have real blood, proven scientifically. We have an image that's neither painted, nor photographed, nor scorched, nor rubbed, or in any way made by the hand of a man.
Hey everybody, this is a selective and an inaccurate representation of the data regarding the Shroud of Turin. This is not how scientific analysis works. To begin, the preponderance of evidence has long supported and continues to support the conclusion that the Shroud is an artistic production of the late 13th to the late 14th century CE. We have multiple different carbon-14 analyses that agree with that rough range, and that actually supports research that was conducted before the carbon-14 analyses that suggested the same date range based on artistic considerations. Now, there have been attempts to discredit those carbon-14 analyses by suggesting that samples were corrupted because a fire burned the shroud, or because the samples were taken from a part of the shroud that had been repaired. But none of those are supported by any data at all, and they would not produce the results that were found anyway. So the carbon-14 analyses continue to be salient and to be strong evidence of the medieval production of the shroud. Now, this individual suggests that it was not produced by a handful of different means and was not produced by the hands of a man, and this is just ludicrous. There are competing theories for the means of producing the image on the shroud. None of them are conclusive, but very few of them have been conclusively falsified either. And even if they all had been falsified, that would not remotely falsify human-made production altogether. That's not how this works. So this individual is not particularly scientifically informed. Now, there are a number of other considerations that point to the artistic origin of the image on the shroud. To me, as an artist, what immediately jumps out is the proportion of the body. It's disproportionate. To begin, a corpse laying on its back with its hands crossed has its hands over its belly. They don't extend all the way down to cover the genitals. That is an intentional choice based on modesty. In order for the crossed hands of a corpse to cover its genitals, the elbows have to be intentionally propped up and projected forward to get the hands all the way down there. Additionally, the fingers are grotesquely long on the hands of this corpse. And there are other aspects to the anatomy that are just wildly disproportionate, as people have noted for many years. There has also been blood splatter analysis done on the blood stains that appear on the image on the shroud, and they indicate that it's not consistent with the application of the shroud to a corpse laying on its back, but rather the blood flow on the shroud indicates that blood was applied while whatever was underlying the shroud was in different positions. So all of this is supportive of an artistic origin for the shroud, probably between the late 13th and late 14th century CE. But let's take a look at what this individual has to say about the blood that was analyzed on the shroud.
The thing that stopped me from accepting the shroud as authentic for years, 18 years, the blood on the shroud is still red. All blood should be black or brown. And no one could answer for 18 years, why is the blood on the shroud still red? Dr. Alan Adler, Jewish blood chemist, who proved, by the way, the blood on the shroud was blood, proved it. He and I were on the telephone, and then he told me something. The body goes into shock. Jesus was given no water, he was beaten, he was scourged. Consequently, he went into anaphylactic shock. After a period of time in this type of shock, the cell walls of the red blood cells begin to break down, floods the body, the bloodstream, with an enzyme called bilirubin. And when that happens, the blood stays red forever.
So this is known as the bilirubin theory, and this individual has misrepresented wildly what that research actually demonstrated, and more recent research has actually shown that the bilirubin theory is not an adequate explanation for the nature of the bloodstains on the shroud. Here is a study published in 2020 in the Journal of Historical Archaeology and Anthropological Sciences that interrogates two leading theories for how this blood could appear the way that it does on the shroud, including the bilirubin theory, and it arrives at the conclusion that neither of these theories actually accounts for how human blood could maintain the appearance that it does on the shroud. But this individual also claims that this Dr. Adler conclusively proved that the blood on the shroud was actual blood. And that actually goes well beyond what Adler himself claims. He suggests that the evidence is strong that it is blood. But Adler also asserts that it is definitely primate blood, and that has also been called into question by more recent research. That same scientist published another study the same year in the journal Forensic Science International Reports, demonstrating that advances in the serological analysis of blood would produce an inconclusive result based on the findings from the early 80s, that we cannot confidently conclude that it was primate blood. It could have come from a number of different species. So we can't conclusively prove that the Shroud is an artistic production from the late 13th to the late 14th centuries CE, but that's what the overwhelming preponderance of evidence supports, and objections to that theory arise overwhelmingly from misunderstanding, from misrepresentation, or from a place of dogmatism, not data.